Good afternoon, everybody. My guest today is Alisa Kwitney, the author of the recent Ahoy book, Howl, which is a wonderful sci-fi period piece, I guess is the way I'd put it, with a little bit of body horror and a lot of humor and a lot of heart. Um, Welcome. How's it going?
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. I feel like I've come bringing my brain on this um, just post Halloween Day of the Dead podcast.
Yeah, yeah. And this is where I'll be honest and like I read Howl and I am now looking up the rest of your bibliography right now. I know that you've done other work, but I read Howl and reread Howl, and that's what I
Oh, I'm
know
so
right
glad. Well,
now.
this is the second larger collaboration between Morrissey and myself, the artist,
Okay.
whose real name is first name is Alain. Morrissey is his uh, nom d'art.
Yeah,
And
no, that's actually really common in European comics for the artists to go by one name, generally their last name, occasionally their first name, sometimes just a different name entirely, but they don't mess around with the two name things, the European Bande Disney.
well, yes. So Morrissey and we were matched up for a DC project that ended up getting all derailed and then came out in a different way with a different and great artist, Mike Norton. That was Mystic You. But
Okay.
Alan and I just really hit it off, and we kept. It was during a period when DC Comics was moving from the East Coast to the West Coast,
West Coast.
from the sign of civilization,
Yeah, no,
the
as I'm
area that
flipping
is death,
as I'm
west.
flipping through your timeline right now, I know why I recognized your name, even though I couldn't pin it. You were a coworker of a friend of mine. Shelley Bond's been on a bunch of times, and
Yes.
you two were at Vertigo together.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so I'll finish the
Sorry.
exploration of comics recent, and then I'll go further back.
Right.
So we began to talk about all the possible things that we could do, Alan and I, and because we've been talking a lot, and because the editor on that Mystic U project was busy with moving his life and his work from the East Coast to the West Coast, and you see, you jump the gun, the shark, the toilet. Um, I was going to say I had been an editor at DC.
I'm autistic. I sometimes get ahead of I think
Oh,
about everything
listen,
everywhere all at once.
if they say the test for being on the spectrum is membership in SIFWA or being a friend of mine, and that's pretty much. Um, I So anyway, we I had been an editor at DC Comics at the Vertigo imprint. Actually, before it was Vertigo, I am pre-Vertigo, Vertigo, and during Vertigo. And so I knew how to care and feed for an artist. We
Right.
did that, and we started to do a lot of projects together. I think Elan and I did our first project in Femme Magnifique for Shelley.
Okay.
And then we did a really foul and disgusting story for the Edgar Allan Poe Snifter of Terror,
Yes.
inordinately proud of. And then we did Guilt, which
Guilt, which
is
I
my,
did also read. That's the other
oh,
reason I recognize. I
good.
mean, I had to. I mean, A, Ahoy, B, old ladies, and I spent a decade working dementia care. I have an affinity for my old ladies.
Yeah, I'm all about dementia and old ladies. And Milan says, "What's happened
I
to
mean,
my life?"
some of my favorite stories are from demented old ladies. Um,
I've got a creep show story with him too.
yeah.
That's a little nursing home story. But
Okay, I'll have to
so
go track that down.
So, okay, so Guilt, of course, is my 90s Sex in the City meets the 1960s Twilight Zone, and Howl I kind of call Mrs. Maisel meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978. I should,
Right.
even though 1958 Body Snatchers also very good, and this is set around 58. but 1978 is my Body Snatchers. But anyway, just to go back, I know Shelley because I helped tell Karen, you should hire this person.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you because Shelley has great taste and I enjoy talking to her. So if anybody involved in getting her started makes me happy.
Yeah, no, we shared an office. We've collaborated on a bunch of things, and she has
Yeah, no, as
always
I'm
been
looking
a
through
writer.
your stuff at League of Comic Geeks, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm guessing I know lots of these books she did some of, so it's either
Hang
you
on.
worked on them together or you worked,
Yeah, we've collaborated on a
right?
bunch of things. And also I'm trying to find the Facebook page. I don't need to. So Shelley just posted pictures of her Halloween costumes throughout the years.
Oh, wow.
And I think she posted one from either the late 80s or the early 90s where she's Nula, the fairy from Sandman,
Right.
and I am Mazikeen.
Okay. I'm actually Shelley's coming up again soon because she's editing American Caper with David Lapham and some guys from Rockstar Games at Dark Horse. So I immediately I'm like, ooh, David Lapham. Maybe Shelley can get me in.
That sounds fantastic. Gosh.
So yeah, but this is the Alisa Kwitney show, not the Shelley Bond shows. Let's talk more Howl. Um, it's I read it in single issue form when it came out. It was actually I had it on my pull list before Hannah started sending me PDFs. So like I often read it twice in single issue form when it came out because I'd read the PDF ahead of time and then it'd come and I'm like, oh, this was good. I'm going to revisit it. Um,
Wow,
but
that's
I think I didn't click until I was reading here afterwards in the collected edition that part of it was collecting mom's memories as mom was losing them. If it's not too painful, can we talk
oh
about
no,
that?
this
Because
absolutely we can.
because there's so few people that like to talk dementia with me. I mean, I know that's a weird thing to say,
No, I get it.
but particularly people who have gone through it often don't want. I mean, there's a reason why they call it the silent killer because in a lot of ways you have to mourn your loved one long before they're actually gone. You know.
Yeah, so first of all, I am so fine with talking about this. I think one of the biggest when my first novel came out, I remember, that was my literary book that was reviewed in the Sunday New York Times, and it was all about college and bulimia and body issues. And at the time in the 90s, you didn't admit people would say, so what made you write this book? And I'd say, well, I have an intellectual interest in,
Right.
women's body issues. And it felt like this shameful secret. And I was talking, actually, I went in to talk to a class that Paul Levitz is teaching for
Ah,
writing
another
graphic
another
novels.
guy that's been on the show a couple of times.
He is wonderful. So we were
See, I,
talking.
I love that I've got like 30 some odd listeners. Hi, Mom. Hi, Adam. Hi, Britt. Hi, John. But I still have so many guests that like I'll talk to guests and go, oh, I don't just know that person. I know that person.
Nice, nice. Well, so I was
Sorry,
talking to
you got
him.
me in a weird mood.
No, I love it. I was talking to his class about the bulimia and someone said, what made you write about it? And I said, well, first of all, I was bulimic, you know, and I could see Paul was sort of like, but I thought, oh, if there's anything great about getting older, it's you have, I wouldn't say no shits left to give, but fewer shits.
Yeah, yeah. I'll say like as I mean, I was diagnosed actually really recently, and I self-diagnosed relatively late in life as well, because like when I was a kid, like if you could speak, you weren't autistic. And then if you were smart, you weren't autistic. So like from a clinical standpoint, I've only actually been autistic since I was like 32 when the DSM-5 came out.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um, but one of the things that I've realized that my autism has always manifested itself is I don't have a filter. I was never, I was diagnosed bipolar. I never had it in my head. Oh, I shouldn't tell people that I'm bipolar. But what I like about getting older is it's less likely that they give a shit either, rather than going, oh my God.
Absolutely. So let me first, I'll introduce you to my mother,
Okay.
as best I can. So my mother's Eva
Well,
Quick
beyond the introduction that I already got in the book.
beyond, yes. So my mom was a rebel. She was, a beatnik. She lived with my dad outside of marriage. She was very intellectual.
Scandalous.
Um,
The intellectual part, not the living with your dad outside of marriage.
all of it. Um, she was someone who first got into writing and journalism and then became much more interested in well, in addition, interested in psychology and the understanding of self, became a therapist, ran groups. And part of that I should mention was the influence of the celebrity therapist Mildred Newman,
Okay.
co-author of How to Be Your Own Best Friend, the first big or the second big celebrity self-help book. And Mildred is also in the DNA of Howl. So
Yeah.
there's so much fun
Well,
stuff.
I mean, when you said that, obviously, but before you talked about Mildred, I went, so is your mom actually very much in the DNA of both the protagonist and antagonist female characters?
She's not. She's no. I'll tell you. There's so many things to tell, so I'm trying to keep on a track. But
That's okay. We're
I
known for being all over the place
so my
as
mom.
much as we're known.
This is good. This is good. So my mom was the sort of mother who said, at a certain point, I'd had trouble in public school. I'd had trouble in a private school. So my grandparents said, send her to a Hebrew school, a half a day Hebrew school. And I thought this is a swell idea. There were going to be 7 people in my class. I was thrilled. And my mother said, I'll send you on one condition. The day you come home and tell me you want to keep kosher and I can't eat bacon in the morning, that's the day I pull you right out of there. So, so I think that story definitely encapsulates something about my mom.
Right.
She was a proud, we spoke Hebrew at home, but she was definitely not going to relinquish bacon. Um,
That
yeah.
reminds me of have you ever read Christopher Moore's Lamb?
No, no, I haven't.
Okay, Christopher Moore wrote a book called Lamb, The Gospel According to Biff, Christ's childhood pal. Christopher Moore is a very humorous writer to begin with, but
I don't know
he
how.
decided to tackle like the Bible really doesn't talk about Jesus between like his birth and his 30s.
Yeah.
So he decided to like tackle that, including like sending him off to learn from like at a Buddhist monastery and because like correctly he's like, oh wow, Christianity is actually like a lot of the morals are built off of these older religions. What if you had him go? What if the wise men? This is what it literally was. Well, the wise men were you know holy figures from
Ooh.
um but Jesus discovers bacon and it tastes so good that he figures that law wasn't one of the good ones. And it's something that Biff will then remind him of on a semi-regular basis when he's trying to balance whether or not this is really a law of God or a law of man. Biff will just be like, bacon. Josh, remember bacon.
I have to tell you that I am struggling myself. I don't keep kosher, but I try not to eat anything too intelligent.
Okay.
So
That is an issue because
with the
pigs are pretty
exception of
smart.
mushrooms. Yeah, so I've been trying to stay away from pigs and octopi, and
Yeah, yeah.
I know this is not perfect. I mean, I do
Definitely
try.
stay away from the dolphins.
Whale meat,
And
definitely a no-no.
and if Douglas Adams is to be believed, you should probably avoid the mice
I
because they've been experimenting on us.
Yeah, I try to eat stupid. I try and eat stuff that was stupid and died relatively happy, but that's
I
another.
mean, here is the thing. At this point, the pigs that we're actually eating are so inbred and so just fed to be happy that they probably are stupid and happy if they weren't hunted in the wild.
Yeah, you have a great point. I will say so.
I'm just trying
This
to
is just
justify my bacon here.
no. I completely understand. And there was a great. I think was it Rick and Morty or Futurama where they go to a place where the delicious spaghetti and meatballs is is it has a very morally compromising origin. Let's just say that. And my son
Yeah,
showed
that
it
could
to
be
me and
either of them. Yeah.
I was not sure. But okay,
Yeah.
let me go back to
I'm sorry.
back
I,
beyond
I keep
my
taking you on crazy
no, I
tangents.
love this crazy. I it is only my
That's how I
background as
roll.
a teacher
That's how
that
I roll.
helps me kind of
Yeah.
guide it back because I too have taught the school.
Well, and you're an editor. I
And
mean, your whole role is to take those creatives and keep them on track and on schedule and get the book in on
actually,
time.
you know that there are different kinds of editors. I think my favorite part of editing is helping people to make connections.
Right.
And my
I
second
didn't say that was your favorite part of
no,
editing.
no,
You
but
said
then my
it's
favorite, my second favorite part was talking people down from emotional ledges, where they're like, "There's no way I can finish it."
those are also required parts of editing. Your friend Shelley wrote a whole trilogy of books.
That she did. Although we had a very different way of working as editors, and it was very funny because I think I drove her nuts. I spent a lot of time talking to people on the phone. She was more,
Yeah. No,
efficient.
I've had a bunch of editors on it, and like they all have different styles, which is one of the reasons why I've started to like any creator that ever suggests that they don't really need an editor or they don't like editors or whatnot. Aside from the fact that I'll just bring up rock star names and they'll go, well, I mean, obviously. Um, I'll also point out like finding the right editor for you is kind of like finding the right therapist. Not every editor fits, which doesn't mean you don't need one.
Oh, so much. And Tom Peyer is just, I mean, he was my friend and my
Tom's also
colleague
been on.
before he was my editor.
He sent me some baseball comics. It was really nice of him.
He's amazing. And I still I think I did one cartooning class just to sort of experience what it's like on the other side of the desk.
Right.
And I was trying to draw something and I ended up drawing Tom Peyer circa 1990, whatever, with his then he wore a lot of Hawaiian shirts and he had this wonderful
Crazy hair. Yeah.
crazy hair, curly hair, and this sort of uh kind of a combination of laid backness and chain smoking and philosophical. He was like a cross between, I don't know, the Big Lebowski, the Buddha. There's so many things went into the making of Tom.
With some Bill Gaines and Jimmy Buffett mixed in.
Yes. Very
Yeah.
much that intersection of tropical sang-froid and Mad Magazine
Right.
anti-humor.
I mean, I've only talked to Tom the once, but like I would expect that just from Ahoy Comics.
Yeah, well, Ahoy
I mean,
is,
just from looking at the line and the way it's been curated, you know, it's it's it's
yeah.
it's it's brilliant and it's intelligent, but it never fails to be funny, even when it's not a book that's necessarily supposed to. I mean, like your book isn't like marketed as a funny book, but it's got humor.
Oh,
And
it
Toxic Avengers
yeah.
isn't marketed as a serious book, but it's got messages. I mean, it's written by a freaking political cartoonist. You know, I mean, and like getting hooked up with Mark Russell right out of the bat, like shoot showed that like
Yeah.
he knew where to go. Like,
Absolutely. And I remember like talking to Mark Russell back at he actually so he was just starting out and he's so smart. I actually
oh
asked
yeah,
his advice about how can I show a vagina dentata without showing a vagina dentata. And that's in the Edgar Allan Poe story. But
right.
all right, so the thing I was going to say about my mom and about dementia. So my mom was my mentor, my best friend, And when I began to see the first signs that something was shifting, none of her, I would take her into doctors. We did neuropsychological testing, and everyone kept saying to me, "Oh no, she's fine. She just needs to eat more healthily and get more exercise." And then came the pandemic. And so my mom was with me, and kind of, I had to move her out of her Upper West Side apartment. She fell off a cognitive cliff.
Mhm.
And what happened is it changed everything about the way I was working, because it's the biggest thing I've ever had to deal with. And I I found that humor and horror were the two things that really helped me to understand a way to talk about this, a way to work
Right.
through what I was feeling.
So you also actually you were the primary caregiver as well, at least
Yeah,
for a
I mean,
period.
yes and no. Yeah, so there was a period where she was at home with me, and then I was case managing and going to see her all the time, but with,
Right.
home health care aides. Um, we had a few different chapters to all of this. And then COVID came and it was home with
I
me.
only bring that up because it's been something that I've noticed is the people who uh, experience it day in, day out, first notice the issues faster, and second, come to peace with this isn't a horror. I mean, it is a horror, but it's not just a horror. This is just something.
It
And
it
it's not something that never needs to be talked about. And it's not something that will always make me sad because there are funny times too. I mean, oh my God, some of my funniest stories are from old ladies with dementia.
Well, and the thing is, my mom was so intellectual, and we were so close. And so it felt really shocking. But I mean, guilt was one kind of way of dealing with it. And guilt is the story about a woman who has one big regret, and her Upper West Side co-op, has a door where you can go back 40 years in your own life, and you're not supposed to change anything major. And so that was one way of for me, of exploring this whole idea of, how do you deal with the fact that you've made decisions in the past that, looking back, you might really wish you'd gone a different way. And also dealing with the horror that is a co-op board on the Upper West Side. But so with that story, I also wanted to bring in, kind of like the weirdness of buildings. I grew up in a building that was a village. It was a vertical village, and you know so much about your neighbors, but then there are things you don't know, and you can discover that somebody, from your own past has moved into the building, but they were on the other side, so you didn't know. And then there's this communal laundry room. There's so much strangeness to buildings that's beyond Rosemary's Baby. So that was my inspiration for that. For this, as my mom began to change and seemed for the first time in my life not like the person I knew so well, I thought about pod people a lot. And, the whole truth of pod people is that we expect people that we've been very intimate with, our parents, our siblings, our spouses, our kids, to remain known quantities to us. And there are these weird moments where you think, who are you? Do I know you at all? And
Right.
there's this. So I feel like that's the true horror, and the scary part. And the body horror stuff, which is fun, and
Right.
thing to play with. And the humor, which is the only way I can take, I don't like vodka or tequila without a mixer, and I don't like horror without, humor.
Yeah. I'll take the mixer without the vodka and tequila. That's probably why I take so much more humor than horror. um, but yeah,
I've
no,
been doing that too. There's this new, like, non-alcoholic tequila substitute. So I've been doing some
I've
of
just never been much of a drinker. I think. I mean, even during the eras of my life where the like you're supposed to be, like the 20s when like it seemed like everybody just The only thing that was fun was getting drunk, and I'm sitting there going, but it's not fun. Why do you think this is fun?
Yeah, no,
Can't can't we play a board game? That's more fun.
well, it took me many, many years. I think a lot of us were stranger as kids. I have to say that all through my childhood, people wanted to do things that were not reading books or
Right.
reading comics
Oh
or
yeah.
drawing or writing. And I didn't, I mean, okay, climb a tree, play with a dog, but that was just about it.
Right. Right. Yeah, no. I think it's one of those weird things that like so many things that we enjoy that we somehow convince ourselves that we're not supposed to enjoy, and therefore we deprive ourselves. And it's really, really funny when those things are like the things that aren't even harmful to ourselves or others. It's like it doesn't hurt you to read a comic book, but I know people that are like afraid to read comic books around people because
Mhm.
because adults aren't supposed to be reading comic books.
As a kid, I hated summer camp, and I still remember one time I was reading a comic while everyone was getting ready. And at one point I look up and my two counselors are staring at me. The whole camp had left, though the cabin had left, and they were waiting to see how long it would take me to notice. And I was drugged. I was reading like if I had a good horror comic, every time I reread it, I was in a drugged state.
Nice. Are we talking like EC stuff, Charleston or Charlton?
Charlton,
what was your jam?
definitely. I mean, first of all, I loved House of Mystery and House of
Okay.
Secrets and The
Right.
Witching Hour. I loved Charlton, Midnight Tales.
Okay. Okay.
So, and I found some of them recently from and I've recreated some of my uh old stuff. At
Well,
11, I discovered Vampirella, and I had very
oh,
mixed feelings because I did notice that it was kind of, I was raised in a feminist household, and
right.
it was a little uncomfortably objectifying, but the stories in it were gripping, and some of the art, like Jose Gonzalez and Esteban Maroto, just floored me. So I spent yeah, so from age 11, I suppose I read Vampirella too.
Have you read any of Christopher Priest's current run on Vampirella?
I have not. Should I?
Oh my God, yes. Among other things, he's got her going to a therapist.
Ooh, right.
Um, yeah, because I actually, despite the fact that so many of my favorite writers have written Vampirella through the ages, I had avoided Vampirella for the same reason. It felt too objectifying to me, and I'm like, and it was totally like without investigation. It was I was what's the term? Oh, I can't remember the right word, but I was knocking it down without actually exploring it. Um,
And
Contempt prior to investigation. It was totally
oh,
contempt prior to investigation. But then between the fact that I just love Christopher Priest, but another friend of mine is like, "Yeah, I'm reading this. You have to read this," and I'm like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, I've never read one either, but my comic shop guy convinced me to get the first issue, and it's fucking good.
all right. I will look at this. I mean, one of the things that I discovered later, because I liked the backstories more.
Right.
I I discovered that what I really love in terms of comics art is a certain amount of what we call acting, which is
Okay.
the little emotional
Oh
reactions,
yeah.
body posture, micro
Yeah,
expression.
yeah, yeah.
And it's one of the ways that Alana and I really bonded, because I thought, I mean, everyone's mileage may differ, but it's really hard
The
to
acting
be,
in this book is amazing.
well, it's the key to humor. It's
Oh
also the
yeah.
key to dramedy, which I think if I think, what I'm writing here is a real hybrid of, there's some horror, there's some rom-com,
Hmm.
and it goes between, and then there's, hopefully there's emotional drama before you go into the funny. So you need somebody who's got those focus and love of figuring out the pacing and the emotional reactions. And if you're drawing beautiful women, thrusting their sexy, sexy elbows at the reader, then, it all becomes about those sharp little elbows and, God, look at those kneecaps. And then you don't really, it's not a posture that conveys any emotional
I mean, I
effect.
love
That's
that
the
you
thing.
think that the average male clientele is looking at the kneecaps, but
Well, I realize they're not, but I thought I would, you know, breasts. It's so predictable.
this actually leads really well though into one of my favorite questions to ask, and I'm even more interested in asking it to you now, seeing as your history clearly goes so deep. Tell me your comics biography, and by that I don't mean um like your bibliography. I mean like
What formed me?
what formed you? Start with those House of Secrets, House of Mystery, like, and take me through your life. What
Uh,
has formed you? What has formed your thoughts on comics? Give me titles, give me artists, give me anything that pops into your head.
oh God,
Interesting anecdotes,
I
like the
should have.
counselor's just watching you to figure out if you noticed the camp.
Okay, so I'm thinking I should have prepared better for this because my brain is a sieve these days. Um, okay, I started out reading everything. So everything in the 70s meant um, Betty and Veronica and Archie comics, anything that, you go down to your little candy store and they'd have a rack with comics, and sometimes it'd be Charlton and sometimes it'd be DC and sometimes it'd be superhero. And so first I read everything. And then I read romance comics, which were very strange. And what I noticed is my first deepest love was the soap opera of Archie comics and the anthology horror. Those were my first loves. And I later discovered Nicola Cuti, I think, Cuti, did a lot of the stories from Charlton that I had loved. Never got to meet him. I've left out here Mad Magazine, which was a huge influence. God, I absolutely loved Mad Magazine, and I even read Cracked Magazine. I was into
Yeah.
all of that humor and satire. Uh, and I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think where,
No, that's
when
fine.
things change. But I would go over to my friend's house. My mom had a really good friend in the Berkshires, and their sons, Dan and Josh Braun, who now are part of sorry, Submarine, was it Entertainment? They did uh Blackfish, and they do a lot of documentary films. But anyway, they were
Okay.
big comics readers, and they read a lot of Legion, a lot of the superhero stuff. I also loved the feminist superheroes that were having a moment. I took Wonder Woman through her Maud Diana Rigg kind of day with Dick
Okay.
Giordano, I think was
Right.
I think he was penciling as well as inking then. Rose and Thorn, the kind of bipolar superhero. Um, my favorite two for a long, long time, Shanna the She-Devil, before she hooked up with Kazar. She had briefly had her own book. She was She-Devil with a PhD. She was kind of like a kick-ass Jane Goodall type character. And unlike Wonder Woman, she thwacked people with her feet and fists and did a lot of gymnastic stuff off of like Cape Buffalo horns. I was just very into it. Um, so that was that. The cat, before she became Tigra, she was a college student who also had a feminist teacher, and there was some male guy who was trying to manipulate. It was all weird, and there was some seamy, almost pimp-like energy going on around the edges of this. But they were overtly feminist, and these women kicked ass, and I liked that. So yes, so that was what formed me. Oh, I went through in my late teens, I went through a big Conan the Barbarian, Red Sonja phase. Yeah. So then I stopped reading for a little while, and I applied to Columbia's MFA program,
Okay.
and and I think just to screw with people, I said I really like comics, horror, and romance novels, which was just the thing you did not say in Columbia's MFA program in the 90s.
You can get away with the comics now.
Say that again.
I said you could definitely get away with the comics now.
And
Columbia
with
was the
romance, everything has
well,
become much.
I'm just thinking
Yeah.
Columbia was the first school where a comic got turned in as a PhD thesis.
Wow, yeah. But back in the day, so then Krista, I'm just God, I'm having a moment. Sorry, I'm older now. The
That's okay.
Secret Lives of Altar Boys, The Secret Lives of I'm just trying to so the author who died way too young of The Secret Lives of Altar Boys was also in the program with me, and he said, "You love comics. Well, have you read The Killing Joke?" And I had not. And so I discovered that, DC was doing all this really strong,
That
strange, wonderful stuff.
is it the
Um,
Dangerous Life of Altar
the
Boys?
Dangerous Lives of Altar Boys.
Yeah, that would be
Chris, Chris,
Chris Furman.
Chris Furman. And
Yep.
I'm sorry, Chris, I'm old now.
Hello.
And he died way too young.
Also, I put you on the
Also,
spot.
so anyway, I will say that around this time when I started reading comics again, I decided I needed a job and I applied at the literary publishing places, but I also decided to apply at Silhouette, which was in New York City at the time, Marvel, and DC. And DC answered, they're the only ones who initially answered. Later, Silhouette later offered me a job. But so I went in a blizzard, and um, and no one was there except for Kevin Dooley, I think. And then I came back later and I got my interview, and they said, "Well, what are your favorite comics?" And I didn't lie the way you're supposed to in an interview. I didn't say one of the comics they were publishing now. I said, "Really, my first love is horror comics, but you're not publishing House of Mystery and House of Secrets anymore." And they said, "Well, you know, actually, you might be really good. We've got this editor, Karen Berger, and she does a lot of weird stuff with those old characters." So this was
Yeah.
before Vertigo was Vertigo.
Right?
And at the time,
This
they gave
probably would have been about the time that Swamp Thing was like
Swamp Thing. So
hitting
I
its zenith.
discovered Swamp Thing then, and they also gave me a bunch of Sandmans. And I fell so in love with the Sandman comics that before I was called back for my next interview, I went out and bought, all the ones I'd missed. Um,
Right.
and I think those were the days when still I would go into a comic book store in New York City and someone would look at me and say, "There's a girl."
I mean, that still happens in some comic shops. Actually, generally, it's not there's a girl, there's, there's a girl.
Yeah, I think I'm loud and
Yeah.
brassy.
Did you have a favorite New York comic shop?
Um, I don't I don't remember. It took me a while to figure out how to find them. I think I was just glad
Right.
to find them. And
Right.
I don't remember, because very quickly after that, I was getting my comics for free.
That's right. I mean, it's crazy how if you don't have to pay for them, you don't go looking for them as much.
I was getting, in those days, we got all the comics that DC published and all the comics that Marvel published.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that. I know
Yes.
that DC even now gives out a crazy number of comps. I
Yeah.
mean,
I
the
had comics up the gazook.
the number of people who either are doing or have done work with DC who like will have garage sales or hand them out as Halloween things or give them to the local comic shop or Chip Zdarsky and some of the Toronto crowd actually had a special con last year that was their comp con where like 20 of them just came with all their comp books and you could show up and get one for free that they'd sign because they needed to get them out of their basements.
I definitely got rid of way too many comics, but my mother never threw out all my comics. And so I still have
Oh,
some.
wow.
I've replaced some that these were my originals. And
Nice.
oh, this is my Phantom Stranger.
Yeah.
That was the first one I did with Guy Davis. Yeah, this is all Shanna. I think I have the cat in here as well. I should say for your listeners that I was holding up an original Shanna the She-Devil.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's Outsiders.
Yeah, so I just kept
Yeah.
like a few of my favorites from
Well,
Empire.
like based on some of the specific, nice. The
This one would
specific,
get you arrested now because
yeah.
it's the mummy protecting an Israeli soldier during
Well, I
the
mean,
Yom Kippur War.
eh. Um, so
My treasure trove.
yeah, no, as I was listening to a lot of your story, it made me think of, have you read Alex Segura's novels, the two comics ones?
I haven't, but I know I need to. I mean, he's a great writer, and I love that
Yeah.
he's
Because like there's an element that like I was half expecting when I asked the question for you to go, well, truly, I was the one that he consulted with. because because I'm thinking, as you're telling the story, I'm like, you you're telling a story that would fit in so well with the protagonist in the first one.
oh funny. I
Where it's the woman massively into comics, both finding the ones that were more feminist than the other ones and liking the horror comics and where it would have differed is like her character, um because of the setting and whatnot, is like only allowed to be the executive assistant, only it's not called an executive assistant yet.
no.
And she's not allowed to be an editor, and she certainly couldn't be a writer or a creator.
But that was not my experience. So when
Right. No,
I mean,
you were a
yeah,
decade later.
yeah.
But like that there was just similarities in the characters. I'm sitting there going, "Oh, I wish the book was near me rather than downstairs. I'd be flipping through to see if you were in the thank you notes."
Well, maybe he stole some
You
of my
know.
thoughts, but no, I
Well,
mean,
I
I
mean,
was
I
lucky.
I th yeah, I think parts of it are not an abnormal story,
Yes.
unfortunately
Yeah.
and fortunately.
But I mean, I was really lucky. So when I went to work for Karen and Tom Pyre was, my I think we shared an office initially. Um I was really lucky in terms of how Karen treated me and Tom and everyone there. I remember one time Denny O'Neill, early on in my tenure, asked me if
I
I
love
wanted to
Danny
go
O'Neill.
out to lunch, and I was a little suspicious. I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, and I said, Karen, is this okay? Why is this editor who's not you, asking me out to lunch? And she said, oh, definitely go. And I had a great time. He introduced me to Robert McKee's books on story structure. He and Paul taught me a lot about ensemble plotting, multi plot line, A, B, and C plotting over time. There were great lectures, and
Right?
yeah.
Yeah, no, that Denny, I love Denny's work, and I wish I'd started like going out of my way to meet comics. I wish that I'd like broken down that barrier between being a fan and talking to people in the industry that isn't nearly as big of a barrier as I thought it was until I started this podcast. Because Denny would have been a great one to talk to, and there's just so many great Denny O'Neill. I mean, another one of my favorite writers is Devin Grayson, who essentially got her start by cold calling him. I haven't talked to her, but I've heard her talk about it on a couple other podcasts. She's like, yeah, I cold called the DC office to talk to Denny O'Neill, and he talked to me.
He was incredibly kind. I remember that so I did one of the No Man's Land stories,
Okay.
and I was given the story that was pure filler.
Oh, so you worked with Joe Illidge too, then.
Yeah.
Would have been in the office.
I think so. I'm trying to, this is now a moment to, so Zuli drew my issue. But
Well,
what
I
I
just mean
remember,
that Joe Illidge did a lot of the editorial work on No Man's Land.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
All I remember is that I was very excited to be doing a Batman story.
No,
And
of
I thought,
course.
oh, and Denny said, you can't do Batman. And I said, okay, can I do Catwoman? No. Can I do the Penguin or the Riddler or the Joker? No, no, you can't do any villains or Batman. I said, can I do I think was it Oracle at the time? And he said, no, you can't do that. And I said, what can I do? And he said, that's the challenge. So it was an issue that was filling in when everyone else was busy elsewhere. And
Right.
I am really, really proud of that issue because I got in everybody. I put in Batman and Oracle and the Penguin and Joker and Catwoman. So
Yeah, no, that
I felt like I
sounds,
was proving myself to Denny and he let me get away with it.
I love it. I love it. Um, Actually that like this is a newer question. I came up with it when I was talking to Matt Wagner and Kelly Jones recently that I can't believe I didn't start asking a long time ago. Uh, in my 4 short years podcasting, huge amounts of my world have just started feeling surreal because there's this line from this completely blurred line between these people that I love their artistic work and whatnot, and these people who are also my friends.
Yes.
It's like when you're watching a World Series game and texting with an Eisner Hall of Famer. It's like what world did I fall into? Um, and it's made me realize more and more that no matter how long one has been in this business, um, that kind of surreal aspect doesn't get old or go away. Um, so obviously without I'm not looking for you to dish dirt or anything like that, but tell me some of your favorite stories, some of the things that if you hadn't been a comics editor, if you hadn't been a novelist, if you hadn't been a comics writer, never ever would have happened, that you still kind of pinch yourself that they do happen.
Ooh, I'm trying to think. There's so I almost don't know where to begin in terms of, older or new things. Can you narrow down the
Well,
question a
let's start
little?
with a new one because that's almost more fascinating because like that's one of the things. And again, I've only been doing it for 4 years, but like it blows my mind that it never gets old when somebody that I was afraid to send an email to ask them to be on the show, like 6 months later, is like my friend rather than just the person that I'm scared to send an email to, right? um I haven't lost that feeling at all. And from talking to people who've been in the industry much longer, it doesn't seem like most people do. It's there's this sense of wonder from being able, so like you've been in the industry for more years than we're going to do the math on because you're clearly only like 26, 27, and therefore couldn't possibly have been working in the industry 35 years ago.
So one of the stories that, well, I think it's because I was working at DC Comics, I look back now and I wish I'd gone and spent more time with the Mad Magazine guys.
Okay,
But because I was there, this is probably not your expected. Wait, can I find something? I'm going to find
please.
something that I just unearthed in a box. Oh, where are you? No, no, no. Where did I put it? Okay. Wait, it's The Brides of Scheckenstein. Here it is. So, because I was working at DC Comics, my father had Harlan Ellison had started out as a fan of my father's. It's a very young, I think, teenager, and then
Right.
it obviously rose to great success. I think there's some letter that
I mean, he wrote a Daredevil comic. Everybody knows that that's the height of success to get to write a Daredevil comic. I mean,
well,
there's those other short stories in that movie that they stole from one of them, but writing a Daredevil comic, that's
the height. So the thing that I remember is during that time, suddenly I got to talk to more people. I ended up talking to, and I can't remember how this happened that I was in touch with Harlan around this introduction he wrote to my father's book of short stories. But here's this little note. Can you see from Harlan directly? And it says,
nice.
Lisa, Pulp House sent me extras of the intro. I have need for only one or two copies. The books are now out, and I thought you might could use these. Affectionately, Uncle Harlan. And so he wrote this. I don't know, maybe Harlan would have done this anyway. I think the fact that I was an editor, so I get this, this is my father asking Harlan to do this. And instead, he talks about meeting my father and then goes on to kind of attack him for everything he ever did wrong and talk about how crazy all of his ex-wives were, with the exception of Ziva Quitney. And oh gosh, yeah, so there's Z and Fruma and the whole story. Let's see. Hey, Sheckley, when you going to pay me back the 100 you borrowed when you were editing at Omni? And so finally, Sheckley blows it with Z, which I've always taken to be a major stupid move, but maybe it was just the end of the natural life of the relationship. Who knows? And who's the hell to say? None of our business, really. Not that any of us has been so goddamn smart ourselves. So yeah, so this is back when I was an assistant editor. And anyway, it goes on and on about all of the brides of Scheckenstein, in which only my mother comes out sort of beautifully.
Nice.
And yeah, so that was a pretty cool moment. And I think at one point I got to talk with Douglas Adams as well.
Oh,
There were kind of
yeah.
amazing moments for me. And on the other hand, I will say that I think the stuff that I enjoyed the most was talking about story, talking with story about with story with Paul Levitz, with Denny
Okay.
O'Neil, and with Neil Gaiman.
Right.
And I know that right now, you know, it has been that
Tough. Yes. No, I understand.
but I have rarely met anyone besides my father too who talks about story and writing in such in ways that crack it open and invite you in,
Right.
as opposed to people using their intellect to beat you like a cudgel.
You mean that, like, among writing teachers, there are some that are surly, old, failed writers that want to beat you up rather than invite you in? I'm shocked.
Those ones never even let me into their courses because I was always writing genre. But
Right.
yes.
Um, that actually, and this is another question that, like, answer to the extent that you feel like, because it's a little personal. Um, like, again, reading the afterword type stuff, I was I was struck with how you managed to form some sort of positive relationship with a man that you also talk about essentially abandoning you for a decade.
My father.
Um, right. Well, I mean, yeah, your father, right? Right. Let's see that the autism mind forgets the salient points because I know that we both know
Yes.
who I'm talking
Yeah.
about. I assume that the
Just
listener
wanted to
does
make it
too.
clear that wasn't Neil, who was the last
No,
person
no.
I mentioned. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so let me say, so the thing about my father is I was raised in part by his bookcase.
Okay.
So he and my mom split fairly amicably when
Okay.
I was about 4 or 5. And then there was a little bit of contact, and then he just took off for Europe, stopped paying child support, and there was pretty much no contact. But I continued to have his bookcase. So I had the books that formed him, and I had his books, and I had the books of his compatriots. And
Right.
I honestly felt that there was this feeling of recognition I got reading his short stories. My kids have felt it too. They are weird, they are terse, they are funny, they have teeth, they are very accessible, but they stay with you. There are, in
Okay.
particular, I think, two stories about dating, which seemed, very germane when I was dating in the 90s, but now seem utterly prescient to the online dating situation. I think one ends at a firing range and the other ends with being fixed up by your aunt. So I kill nothing by giving you the ending first. I heartily recommend you go back and read them. So
You've convinced me.
so his work was satire that was more popular in Russia and Ukraine because it was read as an indirect attack on authoritarianism. And I loved it. So by the time he came back to New York, I was 14 and I already knew that I wanted to write. And so I wanted to write and I loved to read. It gave us a way to connect that wasn't about emotion and wasn't about him being a father, which it was too late for that. And so I ended up, I'd sit in on interviews and he couldn't remember what he'd written or why. And I would say, having read it more recently, oh, well, that's the story in which this and this happens. And he would say, oh, thank you. And and yet he was also the kind of person where I could say to him, you just left. You left. You didn't pay support. You didn't, how do you justify that? And he could say, well, and he would be able to talk about it and apologize. It didn't ever mean anything different, but you could talk to him about anything.
Okay.
And yeah, so the other thing I will say, I had two big shocks around my parents because they were never together I have very few memories of them together.
Right.
Um, but when he came back in, there were a few times when I would see them sitting together, talking, or I'd see him playing flamenco guitar and my mother singing. Si mis quieres escribirse ya sabes mi paradera. Anyway, I'd look at them and I think, oh, you too. I can see you. I can see you young and passionate, beatniks singing songs of the Spanish Civil War. It was, and then when my mom started to suffer from dementia, um, I started to really read through her letters. And I was in shock because I found these letters and I saw how much they were in love and for how long. We don't write letters anymore. We have emails, we have phone calls. We don't have the same kind of record left. But I
Yeah.
have the record in their oh so clever writing that showed, who they were. And some of
Yeah.
the letters got printed in the back of the graphic
You
novel.
included some in the graphic novel and like initially when you talked about introducing the letters, how much they showed the love, and I started reading them, I'm like, oh, I don't see this. But then as I read them again, I'm like, oh, the love is in the shorthand.
Yes.
The love is in the things that they don't have to say to each other.
Yeah.
The love is that this quirky letter that doesn't seem like a love letter at all, like absolutely can be, in part because it was written down rather than, yeah, I miss letter writing. I used
Yeah.
to do a lot of letter writing when I was a kid, and now I don't have anybody to write to. So, like, I need to find like somebody who wants to be a pen pal again, because
Yeah.
this just, I mean, and like, I sometimes treat emails like real letter writing, and for that matter, I'm more likely to treat texts like real conversations or even letter writing.
Yeah.
I kind of abhor short communication,
We're not,
except for planning.
yes. I mean, we're not built for that. But
Right.
so when I was writing, I think what I was trying to do is get, I wanted to visit a time I could never have known.
Right.
And one of the fascinating things that happened with all of this is that in the book, I write about my mother and a friend. And the friend has a name, Frida, which was not the real name of the friend because I was inventing her. Because my mom, from the
I was about
time,
to say, even if she's real, because like you're not very nice to Frida, so you wouldn't want to.
well, the thing is, all I knew is that my mom had had this really close friend, and that this friend had married a science fiction writer, and so had my my mother, and they were couples friends. And then something happened, and the friend did what we now call ghosting. My mom never called it ghosting. We didn't have that term, and it was an utter mystery. And only after my mom died and after the comic was finished did I actually manage to get in touch with his friend, still alive, still compos mentis, and found out, um, the secret of the dissolution of their friendship. So it's not the story that's in Howl because I didn't know it, and I think it is like so many things, less satisfying than the fictional story. But
Was it over a casserole recipe? Because that would just be. I
no,
mean, no,
no,
because you're in New York, so it can't be over casserole recipe. Maybe a cocktail recipe.
no, um, I think there is having the facts of what irked Fruma, which was her name. She was married to William Ten. They had a good marriage. Philip Class. Uh, I think Philip Class was his real name. She. I think there is something underneath the details of whatever it was. I think
There always
they'd
is.
had a weekly bridge game, and at some point my mom claimed that she and Bob had colds and had instead gone to a publishing party, and this was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
And I'm telling you rather casually because I don't think I imagine this was more my father saying, I've got to go to this party. And
Right.
he would have been the one not wanting to
Well, but
invite.
I mean, one of the things that you had in the story that would actually play along with that is that element of jealousy,
Yeah.
both between her towards your mother and him towards your father, at least in the book or in your book. If there was truth to that in reality, I could see how like both lying not to go to a previously scheduled engagement, but specifically lying because you got invited to this thing that they would have liked to have been invited to.
I imagine that it's people think jealousy is what destroys friendships. I often think it's the perception of unfairness.
Yeah,
I think that unfairness is one of the main propulsions of reading, too. We read and we get very empathically connected to characters when we experience ourselves with them being treated unfairly. So I always think that there's unfairness that propels you a bit, there's curiosity, which propels you. Um,
right.
then there's,
Yeah, I think jealousy is more what the people who are envied call it.
mm,
I think the people who are jealous, and I agree with you. I don't really like calling them jealous. I don't think they're actually upset about the success. And I think most quote unquote jealous people, it's they don't want to tear you down. They're frustrated that they don't understand why they haven't been successful in the ways that they've wanted to be, and you are. And therefore, your success becomes a reminder of what
Yes.
they feel are unfairnesses in their life
Yes.
that sometimes are actual unfairnesses and sometimes are
And I do
not.
think I also think there was some money element in there, which had more to do with my father,
Right.
because I think he was, and again, I think my father was both charming and difficult. I think I honestly think
Once
one of the
again,
reasons
a writer who's charming and difficult, I'm shocked. Shocked.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he was so incredibly self-involved. But I feel sad, I really enjoyed and I want to reach out to her again. I mean, I feel sad that my mother and Fruma couldn't ever have solved that mystery. I don't, not
Right.
that my mother was burning up with questions about that. And I wanted to circle back to dementia for a moment and to say, one of the things about dementia that I think is really fascinating is that it's not one thing and one thing only. Just
Oh
as,
God, no.
you get me in the morning or, usually before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my intelligence is up here. And then I
Right.
just trickle down until finally around 9 o'clock when a lot of podcasts want to speak to me. I'm good for only watching Dancing with the Stars. And
Right.
I, so the same with dementia. And my mom not only had dementia, and initially I got her to the wrong place and they gave her too many drugs. And then I had to wean her off the too many drugs. And I don't know what additional damage that did. Then she had aphasia and she could not speak a lot.
Yeah.
But the great thing is I knew her really well, and I always felt like I could have the conversation for two of us, you know,
Right.
based on almost nothing because, I know more about my mother than most daughters, I would say, know about their mothers or daughters. I know things that a person probably shouldn't know about their mother, but I know everything. I know that when her therapist said to her, oh, you're wearing slacks because you're scared of your own femininity, that the real reason was that my 20-something-year-old mother was embarrassed about her skinny legs, which she'd inherited from her father. So I know so much. And anyway, and it helped us have a conversation. And towards the end, when she was less energetic and as I say, she could barely speak. Suddenly she turned to me and she said in Hebrew, Hebrew I thought was her second language, but it turned out it was her first language, which I discovered with the aphasia. And she said, At kotevet, you're writing? And I said, oh yes, I'm writing about you,
Yeah.
which was close to the end. The One of the final things she said to me was on election day when I was watching the news. We had a little Deathsgiving downstairs. Everyone was gathered around. We had the TV and my mom had been pretty nonverbal. She was one of those things where you could sink more into yourself. You become your mother
Right.
yourself. And suddenly I sat down on her bed. And she said, "Hiya, Bubala." And it was just this wonderful, wonderful moment. And I hope in a way, oh, my second dog coming in.
Hey.
I hope in a way that all of that. Oh, we're getting closer to the end. I wanted to tell you about body horror.
Well, sure.
So, one of the inspirations in terms of the book was the John Carpenter's two different approaches to protean shape-shifting aliens. One, of course, was Starman, the sexy young Jeff Bridges with Karen Allen. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And the other,
That's the one that I've seen.
oh, and the other is The Thing. And
which I might watch this week because it was the one picked for my family's movie club,
ooh,
but I haven't decided if I'm going to because I haven't decided if I'm in the mood for a horror movie this week.
uh, I understand. Well, so Rob Bottin was this very young, very capable, inventing things as he went, uh, practical effects designer on that movie. And he does a lot of the stuff that, it's fun and amazing. And, I mean, if I were in a movie theater in 1982, I'd probably, pee myself, but now on a
Right.
TV or a computer, I can handle
I
it.
mean, I was in a movie theater in 1982, and I guarantee I peed myself.
I
I mean,
It is the highest compliment.
I mean the first movie that I ever went to was Empire Strikes Back, but I missed the big reveal because I needed to be fed, so mom took me to the bathroom.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so Rob Bottin was one of the inspirations for the body horror, and I wanted to do lots of different things. And Alan and I have this deep collaboration, and I would look up, how mushrooms do, and I watched and rewatched The Thing to be inspired for, my big fight
And
scene.
now I have to watch it. You've made it so I'm participating in my family's movie club this week because now it's not just the movie they're all watching it. It's like it's the one that's related to the podcast that I
Well,
did.
I think you should watch it and then rewatch Starman because
Okay.
they were done so close in time together. And I always feel like if it's like Cesar Millan showing you a dog that's really out of control and then showing you how well behaved it can be. And, I just keep thinking if you'd only taken the alien from The Thing and treated him a little better, he would have turned into young Jeff Bridges. And who doesn't want that? Um, so so the thing is, I wanted to play with body horror, and I wanted it to be funny. And as I say, I love, I was just rewatching Troll from 1980, is it 1981 or two? The little horror puppets, also in an apartment building in New York City.
Sounds right.
The little. Um,
Right.
okay, I'll stop that now.
No, 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 no.
So I thought I was sort of prepared. My mom had a skin cancer that we had removed, and you couldn't really do chemo or radiation because it's just not the thing you do to someone with pretty advanced Alzheimer's. They wouldn't understand. She had no,
Right.
and she wasn't verbal enough to even report on things accurately,
Right.
except for these weird flashes of cognition you'd get. But so when the tumor came back, it came back quick in a very unexpected place on her neck and started to grow. And I wanted to see if we could remove it just to make her comfortable. And because of its location, it couldn't be removed. And then, she was on hospice. So this tumor started to look so disgusting. I mean, it was growing and it started to ooze and it had all this smell. And I started to call it Squiggy. And I just felt like it was squamous cell. And I felt that there was only one way that I could handle this was with humor because we were going to have to live with this cancer and it wasn't going to get better and there was no way to heal it. And our lives don't give us a lot of preparation for
No.
happening to the person that's been the most important person to you in the world. And so all I could do is say, is there anything we can do about Squiggy? Squiggy's really smelling and I think it's a little uncomfortable right now. Squiggy broke through the bandage. And toward the end of life, actually, there was a real fear. And I don't think I fully let it in that Squiggy was going to hemorrhage and it was going to be this big kind of John Carpenter ending. I mean, it wouldn't have been so bad for my mom because she would just experience uh, rapid blood loss, which isn't the worst thing in the world when you're.
Yeah, there are worse ways to go.
But might have been very dramatic. And I remember that at one point, the nurse who came in was also called Alisa. And then the other nurse came in, and I could see that people were like, Squiggy's bleeding, and we're having a little trouble stopping the bleeding. And it felt that in there, I mean, obviously none of this was going to end well, but there was this sort of crazy fun humor to it, like, well, let's try this, how about we do this, how about we, and it felt, I don't know how to describe this, but there's so many things that ache in me with the loss of my mom, but I felt that writing Pod People and Body Horror actually protected me and helped me make it through, so that I could be there, dealing with all of this with calm, strange humor. So yeah, that was.
I love it. I love it. All right. I'm gonna ask my favorite closing question. Um, Tell me something you love, preferably a comic, but we don't have rules. Preferably storytelling, but again with the rules.
Mm.
But something that you love that not enough people around you have experienced, and you want them to because you want more people to talk about it with.
Oh gosh. Okay, so I don't know if all the comics people I know about Roz Chast's Can We Talk About Something More Pleasant? But
Such a good book.
it's such a wonderful book, and she is just a fabulous writer artist. And then there's another one here. Let me see if I can lay my hands on it. Oh, see, I'll remember. Wait, is it this? Yes. I did. Probably Nothing. Probably
All right.
Nothing, A Diary of Not Your Average 9 Months by Matilda Tristram. Wonderful, very deceptively simple cartoony drawings about a woman who finds out she has cancer and is pregnant. Um,
So
it's
probably nothing by Matilda. What's the last name?
Tristram,
Tristram.
Tristram.
Okay.
So those are two, given this, I mean, if you'd asked me in another moment, I would have said something else entirely.
This is why it's my last question, no matter how many times you've been on the show,
Hmm, I love
because
it.
there's always a new answer. And it's one of the few places that I have people like recommend comics that I haven't read. Because I read way too many comics. I mean, I don't actually think that people can read way too many comics, but I read a lot of comics.
And
It's always cool to actually have one like the probably nothing I had never heard of. So,
well, so the actually, when I'm teaching comic book writing, I often point to the lovely, charming illustrations in here, and I say,
oh,
how much
nice.
art background do you think this artist has? Because it looks, her drawings look a little like Madeline, the
Yeah.
sculpt, from
Yep.
Madeline in Paris. And often people's first reaction is to say, oh, no background. And then they look again and they see that this is, it's a deceptively
Oh, yeah. It's
um
almost harder to tell a story
sorry, my dogs are
that
barking at
simply.
the door.
Um, like the number, I mean, the last time Shelley was on, she brought Liz Prince with her because Liz did the art for her camp book.
Mm.
Um, and I've actually been a fan of Liz's for even longer than I've been a fan of Shelley's.
Oh wow.
And part of that is because Liz has this deceptively simple style that makes you feel like you can do it too.
Yes.
But when you start deconstructing it, you go, oh my God, this is so
Yeah, yeah,
just
absolutely.
right. Um, and that's, I mean, that's one of the beauties of comics. I just reread for a book club tonight. Have you had an opportunity to read Raina Telgemeier and Scott McCloud's The Cartoonist Club?
I have not. I've read other books by both of them with great pleasure.
Right. They got to, because Raina apparently had been telling Scott for years that she wished that there was an Understanding Comics more for the middle grade set. And finally she went, wait a minute, why don't I just call him and say, hey, let's do a book together that's Understanding Comics for the middle grade set.
I love that. And I, by the way, remember him giving a lecture at Vassar College, and I took my then 11-year-old daughter, and she loved it and understood it. He's such a great communicator and great teacher.
Right. But but
Um,
but yeah, so I had a point there. I was rereading it today and like just marveling at, because it's the Understanding Comics for like how much of comics is knowing the acting like you were talking about earlier, or getting the right symbolism. I mean, it's why in some ways it's harder for the polished art to tell a good story because like you can't be too subtle sometimes.
oh gosh, this could be a whole other podcast. And by the way,
It
after we
will be
finish,
later tonight.
will you write me a list of all of the, comics I should be reading? So
I'll
I've
do my best.
gotten,
I mean, what I'll say right now is like we do book clubs out the wazoo. So if you ever want to just talk comics, I can invite you to. I mean, tonight's book club is part of our monthly Joy, Resistance, Hope, and Survival book club and support group. Because after that election last November, I realized that it was going to be a really, really hard 4 years for a lot of us. And we needed a place to gather our strength and to laugh and to whatever. And I also happen to know a group called Psychocomicology, where they use comics in their psychology practice.
love it.
So
Well,
they co-host this with me.
I would
And we
absolutely love, absolutely. Yeah, no, because
so
as I
so
say,
yeah.
comics are my favorite drug.
Yeah, so I will definitely send you emails with ideas and letting you know the crazy stuff that we do, because I record way too many episodes because they're my drug too. And talking about them is even more my drug because then I feel like I'm doing something with it. I'm frustrated with the number of people who don't think of comics as a medium, or even if they think of comics as a medium, they don't think of them as like they think of them as a lesser medium. And I'm like, how can you have a lesser medium? like like I mean, yeah, there are books that aren't as good as other books, there are movies that aren't as good as other movies, but to look at a medium and say there's nothing worthwhile in that medium, that's just nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, my grandmother told me that comics would make me go blind,
Well,
but
yeah, no, well, but here's where it becomes even more nonsense, and like it's where me being a geek and whatnot, like they're the only medium that requires you use both sides of your brain. Requires.
yes,
They're far and away the most interactive medium.
dog is complaining that we have excluded her from this party. Sorry.
You have to you have to fill in the gutters. I mean, that was one of the things. Like there's like in Understanding Comics, there's a chapter on the gutters, and in Cartoonist Club, there's a chapter where they're talking about the timing and whatnot, and they're talking about, okay, you've got these four panels. What's the story? And they're like, well, it's this. And it's like, well, but how do you know it's that? Because you don't actually see that happen. What if you threw this in?
Yeah.
What if you switched the order?
And it creates inferential thinking. And in my
Hmm.
experience, I worked at a school for kids with dyslexia.
Hmm.
And the hard part wasn't teaching them the mechanics of reading. It was that because they'd missed some stages of reading, they didn't do inferential thinking.
Right?
And so that was the thing. And I absolutely used comics. And I
Oh
tried
yeah.
to explain, you're not just reading the text, You read
Right.
this image.
I'm friendly with a teacher out of Philadelphia named Tim Smythe, who literally wrote the textbook Teaching with Comics and Graphic Novels. And
Right.
part of the reading reason he wrote that textbook, he's a history teacher and reading specialist at the high school level. But comics are how they unlocked reading for one of his dyslexic children.
Mm.
And that made him, I mean, he'd always been a comics fan, but like seeing that, and with his history classes, like he'll just throw old comics on the table to have them use them as artifacts. Look at them, tell me what you see. They'll have to talk about the fashion or the cars or what they can learn without even reading the comics about when the comic was made. There's so many things. And like, particularly in an era where with teaching, we understand that there are visual learners and verbal learners and whatnot. We're incorporating more and more graphics into textbooks, but like the idea that you would just have graphics and text interspersed is something that collegiate programs are all over, but is still somehow passe
Yeah,
for,
absolutely.
for K through 12.
No, and I think
I
people
mean,
are
John Lewis wrote his biography as a comic. Thank you, Andrew Iden, for convincing him to.
yes. And by the way, the next thing I think that Maurice that Alan and I are going to do is going to be middle grade horror.
Oh, nice. Nice. I look forward to it. Did you see the work he just did with Mark Russell?
I've seen just a little. I can't wait
The
to read it.
Thanksgiving? Yeah.
I
The
am
the,
so
the Thanksgiving one shot was wonderful horror. So, Alisa, stick around for a minute, but let me take us out. For Alisa Kwitney, the book is Howl. The book before that was Guilt. You'll see her in the editorial line all over Vertigo comics through the years, and she's got some novels too. If you do that sort of thing, do you want to plug any of the novels, or should I? Oh, here we go. Rogue, Untouched, Cadaver and Queen, Corpse and Crown, Flirting in Cars. That sounds fun. Sex is a Second Language also sounds fun. On the couch, I mean, keep that away from JD. Um, does she or doesn't she? Dominant Blonde and Till the Fat Lady Sings.
And also
Um,
Moonburn and The Better to Hold You, my two Elisa Sheckley werewolf books.
okay. Oh, I like werewolves. I'll have to check those out at some point.
It's an
Um,
STI. In my world, it's an STI.
it's an S. That's making me think of Charles Burns and Black Hole now. See, comics. So for Lisa Kwitney, this has been 22 panels. We will see you after the next page.